All right. I apologize to everyone. Obviously, technology isn't our forte. Call the meeting to order as the Board of Selectmen, Hampden Board of Selectmen, February 22nd, 2021 at 5:46 p.m. The meeting is being conducted remotely using video conferencing technology as approved by Governor Baker's emergency order of March 2020. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think I know what happened.
Okay. I don't want to hear it.
Right. I'll second that.
The first item we have on our agenda is the minutes of the February 16th, 2021 executive and open session.
I'll address the regular meeting. I think we pretty much looked at that, and I thought it was that the assessors did a pretty good job of their presentation.
Yeah.
So I will
I had a couple of little changes that I'll just give to you.
grammatical
Like,
type things.
Yeah,
or-
yep, like is and it should be it,
Right.
you know, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I'll make a point that I appreciate Selectman Glover's attention to that, and that's why I don't think we need to review when she has little grammar changes and
Yeah.
stuff like that. There's no need
Yeah.
to really take the board's time with it, and I appreciate her giving it back to Pam.
And the
So
executive session,
I'll make a motion to approve the regular meetings subject to the small grammatical changes.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
And the executive session on February 16th, 2020.
I thought it was
they
pretty
seemed
accurate.
fine to me, I thought.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
Second,
All in favor? Aye. Okay. We're going to review, look over the candidates' resumes and interview questions. Have we all looked at those?
We did, and I have to say, I appreciate the work that both Selectman Glover and Selectman Davenport did. And my research online showed that you guys had a pretty good grasp of the questions we asked. The good thing is, like I say, the advantage of other towns already having done that, I saw that there aren't a lot of new ground we're going to be tilling with that. You know, every town is asking the same questions. And I think you're going to see that in what we do here is not, it's relevant to Hampden, but it's also consistent with other towns, other municipalities, what they do. And there should be that method of consistency around the Commonwealth and around the nation. So thank you both for your efforts. And
on the sheet that I gave you, there were the five that I will ask. Davenport I listed his, but he can add other, everybody can add other
Yeah,
things
yeah,
too,
sure.
clearly. And then I got all the rest of the questions so John could pick as he
Okay.
chose from all the rest of the questions, or ask anything on your head. I mean, you know, anything you think
If you have anything in your head,
of. Anything you think
that's
of.
good.
well, that was during the 15 minutes we were talking.
All right, so we'll be ready for our candidates at 6 o'clock. All right. I asked to put on the agenda, which I don't see it here now in this one. Oh, yes, here it is. The Hampden County Retirement Board audit findings. And I'll give a copy of each one of these to you.
Is that where, Bob, you're trying to develop a webinar basically between, or
He's gonna,
a Zoom meeting between the
yeah,
other towns?
we'll get into that. Okay. So I brought this up because, as you know, the Hampden County Retirement Assessment accounts for some of the largest increases in our annual town budget, and it will for the next 16 years. Years of mismanagement by the Hampden County Retirement Board has resulted in it having one of the highest unfunded liabilities of any retirement system in the state. Of the 105 state governmental retirement systems, the Hampden County Regional Retirement System ranks near the top of the list for unfunded liability. Only 8 other systems are worse. The result of that mismanagement is that the 35-member units have to pay at least 8% or more increases in assessment each year from now until 2036. For Hampden, this year, our assessment increased from $603,000 to $706,000, a $103,000 increase. On February 16, 2021, the Public Employee Retirement Administration Commission released an audit of the Hampden County Regional Retirement Board. The audit showed at best an ongoing pattern of mismanagement and malfeasance. The audit cited numerous incidents of waste, abuse, possible fraud, violation of conflict of interest and ethics laws, and other violations of state law. This is taxpayer money. This is working men and women's retirement contributions and retiree money. The Hampden County Retirement Board members have miserably failed in their fiduciary responsibilities. At best, they are incompetent and may very well be culpable in the waste, fraud, and abuse of taxpayer money as outlined in the report. Each member of the board must be held to account for their role in this and their failure to protect the funds of taxpayers, employees, and retirees. Here are some of the findings of the audit. Payment of $235,000 of taxpayer and employee retirement contributions in false invoices for services never provided. 119 invoices worth $234,000. The auditor stated, quote, "This appears to have been scams and the board continuously approved these expenses. The Hampden County Retirement Board had no contracts for these services, had no documentation of monitoring the vendor's performance or of any work product from the vendors. While the invoices that contain reference to a contract or order number, these numbers were fictitious, as were most references to company websites. I held a number of public and private positions, and false invoices are generally a red flag to indicate misappropriation of funds or embezzlement. The Hampden County Retirement Board enrolled 2 attorneys in the retirement system in violation of 2 state laws. State law clearly states, quote, "Such county retirement board may employ an attorney from time to time as required, but such attorney shall not be a member in service of the system or a member of the board." Not only did the Hampden County Retirement Board make these attorneys members of the system in violation of the law, they paid these attorneys $179,266 in legal fees, and the Hampden County Retirement Board paid 90% of these attorneys' insurance premiums, which amounted to $269,144 for a total of $448,210. The significance there is that our employees pay 50% of their premium, we pay 50%, and they're paying 90% of the premiums for their lawyers. The audit cited 3 board members for attending 3 conferences in which an investment counselor paid for lodging, airport transfers, as well as recreation and entertainment at an estimated cost of $10,936. As noted by the audit, a violation of state ethics and conflict of interest laws. In another potential violation of the conflict of interest laws, the Hampden County Retirement Board chair submitted questionable documents to receive a total of $1,825 for non-hotel lodging expenses incurred while attending a conference on Cape Cod. In this particular case, 2 of the 4 receipts submitted specified property addresses number 10 and 12, which according to town assessor's database do not exist. However, these addresses are 1 number away from the condominium owned by the chair, number 11, according to town assessor's database. The other 2 receipts listed a rental company which does not conduct business in the area where the property is in question was located. And I quote, the audit said, "We also noted various discrepancies with the signatures on the lodging document provided." The Hampden County Retirement Board enrolled 3 board members in Social Security, paying $4,842 of the employer's portion. It's in violation of a longstanding Commonwealth of Massachusetts law. Public employees in Massachusetts are not eligible for Social Security. We're one of the few states that don't allow Social Security. The audit stated the board does not obtain or review monthly bank statements. Monthly reconciled bank statements do not agree with the general ledger, varying anywhere from $5,000 to $13,400. The board paid $87,229 in bank fees, while other retirement boards pay no bank fees. Payroll warrants for overtime hours contained only staff names and dollar amounts with no indication of how many overtime hours have been worked or what the hourly rate was. The chairman was given a raise with no documentation of a board vote, on and on. Each individual board member needs to be held accountable. So I'm asking that this be entered into the minutes of our meeting. In addition to that, I think Mr. Mark will have something to add because he had a call today with several other town administrators.
Yes, we had a Zoom call today with town administrators from east of the Connecticut River. it was agreed that we would ask the Hampden County Retirement Board for a special meeting, and that we would also reach out to communities that are west of the river and try and get the communities in Hampden County who are part of the retirement system together to go to a meeting and basically ask for answers and probably to demand very fundamental change, not only in the way the board operates, but also in personnel. So we're going to be doing the outreach. Letter will go in asking for a special meeting. As you know, I've been in contact with the executive director of PERAC, which is the state agency that oversees the local retirement boards. It has an awkward name, the Public Employee Retirement Administration Commission. But anyway, they have oversight authority. I talked with the executive director, and he said to me that he thought that the audit was also scathing and that they have referred the audit results to what he called the appropriate authorities for legal action. It seems to me that those appropriate authorities would be the Attorney General as well as the State Ethics Commission. So at the request of the chair, I'm going to try and reinforce that and make sure that the Ethics Commission as well as the Attorney General are aware and to become involved. I was involved in a similar situation in Essex County. This is worse than Essex County was. It's just inconceivable that you could have such mismanagement of funds. And these are the funds that taxpayers in all the towns contribute, as well as the employees themselves. So the employees in Hampden County, other than in the cities, which have their own retirement boards, have a stake as much as anybody else in getting this straightened out and in proper management, because when we have to contribute, as we do next year, over $100,000 in new contributions to the county retirement board, that takes money that we could use for other purposes in Hampden.
Well, I certainly would compliment Mr. Marco for taking a leadership role in this. All the towns got this report, and yet they didn't all, the report, from what I understand, wasn't forwarded to all the boards, select boards. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Marco took the responsibility to get everybody together, and I think that that's a good first step. I agree with the PERAC that's doing the referral for future further investigation, because it certainly seems like there's malfeasance going on at the very least, and it seems to me it puts our people's retirement in a very tenuous place. I mean, we don't know what will happen, so we have to be vigilant on this, I think, because we want to protect our employees and be sure that they get their due, and we want to be sure that our increase doesn't go up exponentially.
Well, the increase is certainly a concern. Don, I
Right.
commend you for a great report in analyzing the audit and directing Bob to, let's get together with the other affected communities. Like you said, this is the worst increase I've seen percentage-wise in the years I've been here. And this just shows a callous disregard, basically, to the member communities.
Right.
That we can just go ahead and give them any bill and they're going to pay it. And I think right now we're seeing a little upsurge saying we've had enough. And this keep going on.
The Wilbraham Board of Selectmen, and there may be others, but I know that the Wilbraham Board of Selectmen have this on their agenda tonight.
Okay.
And I would also thank Don for the report, because it makes it puts it succinctly, and these are the major issues that you guys have got to be aware of, which is good.
All right, thank you. Are you ready for our
6 p.m.
6 p.m., our interviewee? Do they draw straws?
We draw on numbers, and
Who's the lucky winner?
Officer from.
And do we have
Levity,
do
really?
we have the essay that they're going to do and where they're going to go and do that?
We can certainly put them in.
Oh, they got 3
the
pads
office
right
over
there.
here. So
Do we have the essay written?
we have in your
No,
packet.
you have
In your packet,
questions
you
and
have.
at the
Got the
end of
questions.
the.
And
All
then-
that
I got
information.
questions.
How
I got
are
it right
the
one.
people going to get the questions?
Well, I don't know. Are you going to have them seated in one room?
No,
Respond?
they go
No.
separately. You put them
Right.
someplace, like
Well,
in
we
that
can
other room
put
out
them in
there,
the copy room.
in the copy room.
Yeah, they can't,
Leave their phone with you.
Yeah.
we'll make some long distance calls.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening, good
I'll
evening.
in front of you for 1 second.
John,
Detective Trombley, how are you?
thank you. How you doing?
Good.
Give you an elbow.
I'm gonna get the elbow.
Elbow, the official elbow.
All right, Mary Ellen, the official elbow.
Oh, I surely will. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Thank you for coming in and thank you for your interest in continuing with the town of Hampden. We really appreciate it.
You.
Have a few questions we'd like to ask.
Okay.
Ariel, you want to begin?
I guess I'll begin. We thought we could begin by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, how your education, training, and experience have qualified you for this position.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for allowing me this opportunity as an internal candidate to go for this very important position in the town of Hampden as police chief. Secondly, a little bit about myself is I grew up in Palmer. I went to Palmer school system, graduated from Palmer High School. After that, started working part-time in the immediate area departments, Munson, Warren. At that time, I went ahead and got a associate's degree through STIC. After that, I was working part-time in Munson and I became a self-sponsor to go to the full-time academy through Munson Police Department. I didn't have a full-time job coming out. So after that, I went on to Hadley Police Department for a full-time offer. After Hadley, I had an opportunity to come back to Hampden, which I was working part-time. I hired under Chief Stone. Got my bachelor's degree at that time through Anna Maria College. And continued working in the town of Hampden from 1994. Full-time officer, I was hired. Been with the Hampden Police Department for approximately 26 years, just over 26 years. Going to be 27 in June. June 2nd, I was hired by Chief Stone. I am married to my wife, Barbara. We live out in the town of Warren. We have two beautiful children. One's a 22-year-old daughter. She's at the University of Westfield. My son is a student at the University of Westfield. He's 20 years old. So my experience over the last 26 years as a more so senior patrolman in my skill level has allowed me, I believe, to apply for this job and be able to do the best I can do at this job. The contacts I've allowed to have, the resources I became a senior patrolman very early on in our career, the Hampden Police Department. And with that being said, a lot of opportunity came. I became in charge of our property room, very responsible to handle our court work outside the agency, a lot of contacts outside the communities, along with the state police, district attorney's offices, the local courts. And that started early on and gave me a lot of responsibilities that was given through me through the last four chiefs that we had: Chief Stone, Chief Adams, Chief Mellis, and past Chief Farnsworth. And so having those fostered relationships that I had gave me the opportunity to move forward. I think a strength that I have, I'm fair, willing to work with others. I'm about a relationship and trying to understand what's going on, giving that opportunity, a second chance to move forward. A weakness that I kind of see is, as my position as a detective, I've taken on a role of holding on. I can become like a mission focus, would you say? And allowing that delegation, I've got to work better on delegating a little bit in that aspect. I work independently. I've been working independently for so many years in the Hampden Police Department, and having so many responsibilities and all these different jobs that I've had, it's allowed me to hold on to and do it. So I think I got to work on my delegation a little
want to add something, or you want to ask, or you want me to go on through my
ahead.
list?
Go on your list.
Okay, what experience have you had with budgeting and technology?
So with budgeting, as you may see in my resume, I did have a chance to be our police chief. I was appointed our police chief in 2005. I was there for about a 3-4 month period of time. We had some serious critical instances that did happen. And at that time, I was starting to learn the budget a little bit, because at that time, if you remember, our library was closed, our street lights were shut down, and we were working, unfortunately, on demand. I was just starting to get a feel and understand the budget a little bit. As a union representative, I've had an understanding, because we do have a cap on our budget. With that cap, I've gone to our chief secretary and tried to understand the budget a little bit. I am aware of the line items that we do have in the budget, the expenses that we have, what we have allocated for us to use. That would
Okay.
technology. I'm sorry, Mary.
Yeah,
We
that's
did
okay.
want a little bit about
Yeah,
the technology.
what do you know about
The technology within inside of our agency, we do have a technology person. And for the purposes of stepping way out, I don't have a lot of experience other than our in-house computers and what we use in our house, the computers and the cruisers, and the computer to do my job for our technology. But we do have an officer who does most of our technology within in-house.
My third question is, what is your leadership and management philosophy, and how do you build a team and motivate others?
So I would start with saying my leadership philosophy is I go back. I want to listen to our officers, and I want to and move forward as a team. I'd say more of that along the lines of that team player. We have a management team. Myself and the sergeants would be that management team, and then we have our officers that are going to be there, and we're going to work within the means of what we got to do for the best interests of our residents and citizens of our community. And for me to facilitate the best information back and forth with the board to go back to you guys to make the best decisions for the town.
And what is one glaring deficiency in the police department, and what would you do to correct it?
One glaring deficiency in the police department, I'd say, is currently trying to retain our reserve officers. I see the reserve officers play a big portion in our budget. And with those reserve officers, it offsets the budget. Trying to retain the officers is going to get even harder, I believe, with our new police reform that we have in there, where they're expecting in being in contact with area chiefs, over 250 to 350 hours, they're expecting our reserve officers to build up to meet the full-time officers. And having that said, it's going to be a time for us to kind of really decide as a town, a board, and where we're going to go with it. We need our reserves. Our reserves are a good portion of our time off and all that. But retaining them,
Would be difficult.
it's going to be a difficult position with the new hours coming in, yes.
And then my final question is, what is the biggest challenge you think you will face in this new position?
I want to believe biggest challenge is going to be dealing with our police reform again. So we're going to be modernizing our department between the policies and procedures that are being brought up by this new signed police reform in December of this last year, 31st. They're asking us to take another look at the current policies under use of force, our de-escalation methods, change of really way we're going to do business from this point on. So I think that's going to be a challenge for any one of us to get in there, for any chief in the current areas. One thing I do think is a plus for me is being around for so long. I've made a lot of relationships out of town, in town. The out of town chiefs that maybe were on a drug task force with me, or another group that I belong to, a detective group, they've moved up in their command staff. I'm not going to know everything. I'm not going to have all the answers, but I'll be able to reach out to others to find out and make those challenges easier.
Thank you.
Well,
I've got everything done.
you answered part of, you
Covered all the bases.
answered part of my first question, which I'm gonna ask it anyhow, because I got it written down here. Regardless of your personal view, Massachusetts recently signed into law significant reform legislation, creating a mandatory certification process for police officers, along with other reforms. How would you ensure that all Hampden police officers and departments are in full compliance with this new legislation?
So as I did say a little bit to Mary Ellen is I do, being around and having all the contacts, I'm going to reach out to other sitting chiefs and other policy procedure makers, our lieutenants and area departments, and look to work. We are going to have legal guidance through the Mass Chiefs to assist us with that. But there is like a template that's out there, and there's guidance to where we need to go and what we need to hit for target dates. So I will, as a new sitting chief, have to reach out to other chiefs to see where we're going. But I will. We are. Chief Farnsworth has done a great job over the last 15 years. And having that said, is he's moved our policies up, and so there is going to be a little changes here and there, but we are pretty much in compliance as we move forward, and we're just going to keep moving forward into the modernization. So we are stable, but we're just going to have to hit our target dates.
You talked about the reserve and auxiliary officers. Is it going to affect them because they're going to need training? How much we'll have to pay for that probably, right?
So again, reaching out already to some of our contacts in sitting chiefs, the state mandated us to the new police reform. And we are hoping, maybe with Chief Farnsworth and others that are up there, our state reps and all that, we can reach out to them, and monies will come back to us. But that's going to be up to everybody coming together and saying, you put this on to us. Is it going to be up to our town to handle it, or is it going to be up to you to bring monies to us? So that there is still an unknown. They're still circling with it, but that is a concern. Yes, it is. So we could end up.
Right. No, I understand that. Yesterday was the day when they were supposed to first begin meeting, and they never had a meeting. So
Okay.
that's where we are on that. Okay. As you know, we're going to consolidate our dispatch with Wilbraham.
Yes.
Pros and cons of that decision?
I support the decision that the board made, and you are our ears and our eyes of listening to what the residents had to say. You've had some difficult decisions to make that decision, but I stand behind what the board has said with that, and we'll make it work, and we'll move forward with it. Absolutely.
How do you see it being successfully implemented?
I think Wilbraham and Hampden have always had a very good relationship. I think we have good sitting people over in Wilbraham. They're going to look at us to make it work. And I think with me in there, having the relationship that I've had over the last 26 years with almost all those members I've worked with, from officers right up until command staff, I think we'll have a very good, easy transition.
The other towns have consolidated dispatch. They've gone to a totally dark police station. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, that is in a smaller community, I think dark stations are a concern. I think small towns, people like to see somebody, like to talk to somebody. Even in my own hometown, we have a dark station. And an example.
You're there with Rutland?
No, I'm out in the town.
No, you're in Warren, but they're with Rutland, right? Yeah.
But even for my wife, who we had an adoptive cop program out there,
Yeah.
brought down some gifts for one of the officers. As soon as you walk in, you press a button. Out comes a voice. You have a shade down.
Yeah.
And then the voice says, leave the basket there. We'll have someone come get it. You don't have that, and so yeah, it's going to be at first, it's going to be an adjustment. We're going to have to make it work as best as we can. That's what we chose to do.
Well, we're thinking of having correct me if I'm wrong, we're thinking of having 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 person there for at least to do the business of licensing for firearms and,
Sure.
Picking up automobile reports and stuff like that. So
I agree with that. I have done a little research on that already, of reaching out to the area departments that have dark stations. And even with us, noted, seems like that 5-6 o'clock hour, we start to lose people coming in.
Mhm.
So I think the day target is going to be good. We do have, me being a day shift officer, I see it all the time. People coming in, action reports, just general questions and all. So I think that would be a great idea to have a station coverage from those times.
How are the sick calls handled now?
How are our sick call calls? So currently a sick call would come into our dispatchers,
Right?
and then the dispatchers would go ahead and fill that sick call. And would make note to the senior officer on shift or IE sergeant and let them know that somebody called out sick, and we're trying to fill it depending on where the cap is. So as I said earlier, we get the first right of refusal for overtime
Mhm.
as a full-time officer. And if our hours are met already, then we would go on to a reserve officer. If we can't get a reserve officer, we would then go ahead and reach out to another full-time officer to come in to make sure it's
Okay.
filled.
I see here that you were a breath test recertification instructor.
Yes.
And as you know, the court recently allowed 27,000 individuals who had failed the breathalyzer test to reopen their cases because the breathalyzers weren't calibrated correctly or whatever.
Right.
What's your,
So there was an issue that came out of Texas when our dragger machine was made. OAT has been on top of that, but we had a attorney from the immediate area that really focused, and his forte was the breathalyzer to assist as best as he could. And there was some errors and deficiencies in the machine at that time that he found. And by all means, if it's mechanics and it's not operating right, well, we have rights and people should be given that opportunity. And that's where I bring out earlier as one of my strengths. I think it's that second chance and that fairness, obviously, that you've got to work with. Sure.
I see also that you're a school resource officer leadership program. You know, under the new legislation, police reform, it used to be mandatory that every school district had a school resource officer. Now it's no longer mandatory. The superintendent can ask for it. The school committee has to approve it. Do you think a school resource officer is a valuable asset, or can we do without it? Or
So currently we utilize Officer Menard from the Wilbraham
Yeah.
Police Department, who does most of our school resource working. I had some hand in it. We had one of our other officers doing it. Sergeant Joy over the years have been involved. It's definitely an asset. I think not having an officer at our school here for our K through 8 is doing us a disjustice. If we can get an officer in there, even at part-time, the experiences that I still just took a call about 2 weeks ago from a parent, and we're talking about an ongoing case that we're going on. And she says, my son was listening to the conversation as I was talking to you, detective. And I said, yeah. She goes, he remembers you from the school over at Green Meadows, and he has nothing but good to say about you. Just seeing that officer in a different light.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's someone to go to with a professional opinion. There's guidance counselors, there's school adjustment counselors in there. But yeah, I believe if we can get an officer in there working with the superintendent, definitely would do well for us.
I'm through with this witness, Counselor.
Thank you, Senator Urban. Scott, good to see you again.
Good seeing you again.
Couple questions. You've been here for a number of years where we've brought new people on. The typical question we always ask is, Hampden is about community policing. What's your feeling about a current level of it? What do you see are strengths and what do you see for improvement?
Our current level, I don't see us doing nearly as much as we did years ago. As Don had mentioned about me being in a school, I was also a school resource officer, and we were having our national night outs. We were having the Hampden Police Golf Tournament. We were having our police academies. That went by the wayside, and I think it does happen a lot of times with the monies that are out there that are allocated. We have those grants that come in, the grants that come out, and models to change. We definitely need to get out of our cruiser. We need to get into our businesses. They need to see us. We provide a service for our citizens.
Would you say it's because of the trust factor? You talk about your relationship in the schools and that child remembering you. It goes back to some of the older ones remembering Bill Joy as the DARE officer.
Sure.
And then when they see you, there's no like, oh, that's the police. Oh, no, that's my friend, officer so-and-so. He'll help me.
Absolutely.
And that's what you want to bring. You want to build up the community.
I want to bring that back to, I want our officers to know our business owners. When I go and I have a crime that happens in our town as our detective, I'm fielding around trying to find out who has video, who
Mhm.
might have saw that. I can maybe go to that officer, that liaison officer, who already has all that information for me, who's already written it down in somewhere in our station and made those contacts.
Mhm.
And we can pull their video and we can review whatever to see if we can see. So yes, I want to take the same relationships and bring it back into our community, to our businesses,
Mhm.
not only to that, to our churches,
Mhm.
to our residents. We started a neighborhood watch years ago under Sergeant Juber
Mhm.
up in the Bennett Road area. And again, it fell short. We never continued it. We started the project, but we didn't continue the project. We need to continue. We've got a new way of modernization policing. We have to move forward with all of that now. It's almost like starting over a little bit. So absolutely.
Okay. One other concern I had, and this came up in a staff meeting, Bob, you recall, last year, is I was concerned about, from emergency management, having a track of the seniors that need assistance, maybe during a blackout, during loss of power. And at that point, there seemed to be a problem with maintaining that list because of regulation. Is that something you think you could work towards? Again, helping to make sure these people who are really at risk during emergencies are taken better care of?
Absolutely. It's part of my job as a police chief to bring our community together. Our seniors make up a good portion of our community.
Mhm.
And we've got to make sure that they're safe and they feel safe. I wouldn't be doing my job as a police chief, if I couldn't make sure that every resident, young and old,
Mhm.
felt safe in it.
Okay.
And I'll continue to, again, through my contacts and area departments
Mhm.
that are doing that, to make sure it happens in Hampden. So yes, absolutely, John.
Are you adverse to taking guidance from other communities saying that place, the way they're doing it? Would you always take, if some place is doing it better, the town of X has a great program, you're saying, we're going to take that into Hampden?
No, I'd like to take it back to my team, my management team.
Mhm.
You've got the chief of police and you've got your 3 sergeants in there.
Mhm.
And then any senior officers that want to come in, that's going to come into a staff meeting. It's
Mhm.
going to come into a department meeting. But at the top, really for some important things, it's going to be me and the 3 sergeants.
Mhm.
And we're going to talk about that. Hey, I was over next door. We're at a chief's meeting. This is something that they're doing over there. How can we put our own little
Mhm.
niche on it?
That's my next question. Do you think we're currently, from a chief standpoint, too hands-on or too hands-off, where like Goldilocks are just right?
I think we're not just right. I think we need to be more hands-on.
Okay.
Especially with what's going on and where we're going
Mhm.
with the new police reform. They want us, again, providing that service to the public.
Mhm.
And they want us to de-escalating our use of force policies. They want us to make sure that public, that's the citizens and residents in the town come
Mhm.
first.
All right.
And we want to try to do everything we can do before we go to that next level.
I have to do it the hardest question because I was here 15 years ago. What's changed in 15 years?
What's changed in 15 years? You know,
And just to say, I voted for you 15 years ago. So, what's changed? You're a different person. We're all different. And
so what's changed in me basically over the last 15 years? I've matured. My family's grown older.
Mhm.
I've gained more experience.
Mhm.
I've developed in the position I've been. This detective's position at a desk, and having the independency and the responsibilities in fostering all the relationships outside the court, being in charge of the court,
Mhm.
paperwork, officers, young and old, and even supervisors coming to me and asking for my opinion,
Mhm.
has just gotten better and more and more and more.
Mhm.
Has given me actually an excited feeling to move forward and challenge myself to this next step as a chief of police.
appreciate it. Thank you. Because I knew that was going to be, I want to say the hard question, but you knew it was going to come up.
Yes,
Right. And you answered it great.
thank you.
Excuse me for one moment. Is there a time limit on the essays or not?
20 minutes.
I'm off for the next 2 days.
I thought you had a shot for me. What?
So,
Yeah, we're
Okay.
scheduled every half hour.
okay.
Well,
Just
well,
John
I'm
has
done with
one
this
more
witness.
I want to.
So as soon as he's
Redirect?
Yes.
What?
Redirect.
Was there a person in your career who really made a difference?
Excuse me,
Was there a person in your career who really made a difference?
Chief Stone.
Um,
You know, I tell you, just a touching man. I had an opportunity to come to this agency, to this town, through meeting his wife. And nothing but giving you that complete understanding, care, compassionate leadership that I have watched and sought after as I've been in our agency. And my hero, I gotta say, in our agency, he's a great man. God rest his soul. And yeah.
Thank you. Bob, you have any questions?
The answer is no, but I'm just thinking, are Massachusetts police headed towards the style of London Bobbies?
Maybe,
Huh?
maybe.
Gotta change their uniforms.
We might have to change the uniform.
Yeah.
You know, it's what they want, and it's what the residents want, and we'll make it work within the means.
I would just, in closing, I would just compliment you on all the different things you go. I'm a big education person, and all the things you have participated in
Thank
to get certification and upgrade your skills in specific areas, which
Thank
I
you.
think is commendable because you didn't have to do any of them.
Thank you.
You know, you already had your degree, so
Thank you.
yeah, good for you.
Education,
Good
very
for you.
important. Thank you.
Education.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank
All
you.
right, I just before Pat, I just did come up with a couple of things. I was thinking, these are some goals I want to go over quickly that I had actually,
Thank you.
and it won't take long, Bob, I know. Bob, you can have one here, John. So if I were to be selected as our next police chief, I just wanted to, short-term goals and some long-term goals. We've gone over it a little bit. Just let me rush through it quickly. You got a minute or no? No, I'm good. We went over basically all of it. The only implementation of police changes, fill a vacancy of my position, create partnerships within our community, dispatch services, fund another position, feasible study, informational, technical, and grants. One question I have for the board. What's the most important task that you want the new police chief to focus on?
First one, consolidation of dispatch.
Consolidation of dispatch
sure that
and
people-
getting the emergency communication system up and running.
That's not done?
Not done. I have to climb the damn tower myself.
You know, if you want, I'll help you. I'm a team player. We'll go up there, Don, and get it done.
And I would say for me, it's communication and being a face to the public and getting trust back between citizens and police, which seems to be deteriorating around the country. And I would hope that would not come to him.
Right.
All right. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
So how are we doing the essay thing?
All right, well,
I follow you, sir?
I'm gonna collect
I follow
those.
you.
And I'm gonna collect the two.
Yes.
from the two
Yeah, yeah.
gentlemen who completed
Is that phone better than mine?
Is his phone better than his?
You don't have a flip phone, do you?
No, it's such our-
What the hell is this?
I'm dropping a flag because people die.
Did you just say flag? Did you just say flag?
Yeah.
We're
Because I,
dropping the flag tomorrow because of COVID death.
okay,
So-
I asked Eva to get us, to look into getting us another flag of a higher
Hey.
quality than what we have hanging
Doing
in the
good.
town. Yes.
We're gonna do this.
How are you? How are you?
Right,
How are we all doing today?
good,
We're doing
good.
good. How are you?
They all got the team masks.
Yes.
Yeah, I like these masks. They're nice.
One of our officers put it together for us.
Yeah.
Ask him to do that.
So we didn't have to pay
Did
for
you
it.
get the?
No, we all chipped in
Gotta watch that
around.
budget.
Are we
Yes.
ready for the board of selectmen mask for next meeting or something?
You have
Yeah.
coat of arms? that we
Go to
want?
Well, I guess I will begin.
Okay.
We've developed some questions that we're
Okay.
asking all the candidates the same questions. And we begin by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, and how your education, training, and experience have qualified you for this position. So it's a sort of a broad question, but you can tell
Yes.
us anything you want.
Geez, where to begin?
You know, introduce for the people, just in case they don't know who we're interviewing.
Oh, yes. Sergeant Yvonne is a sergeant in the Hampden Police Department. And Tom Yvonne.
Okay, go ahead.
Since their best view of you is from the.
I was
back
gonna
right
say,
now.
you're seeing the best view of this. I said, tell us a little bit about yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, and how your education, training, and experience have qualified you for this position.
I'm 47 years old, married with 2 children. I live 5 minutes away, just over the line in Summers. I've been a police officer since 2001. I've worked my way up through working at the Granby Police Department. I left there in 2013 to become a full-time member here. Aside from the law enforcement and learning how to be a police officer, I also own my own businesses. I have several employees right now I have over 50 employees. I've had as many as 120 employees. I'm very attuned to the tasks that need the budgeting, the hiring, firing, workman's comp, all the ins and outs of employment, running people, building staffs, building morale, supervising managers. I've done that since I've been 21 years old. In a very hard industry. I think it's food service is one of the hardest industries. I have employees that have been with me 20 plus years because I believe I know how to take care of them, train them, keep morale up, lead from the top down, empower them to do their jobs and support them, which I think is very important in the chief's position with the administrative side of it. We spend years becoming police officers, but they don't ever teach us how to supervise or budget or administrate. And when you become a chief, it's less about law enforcement, more about the administrative side of it, which I think I have a tremendous amount of experience being self-employed for the years I have been.
Okay. So one of my questions was going to be, what experience have you had with budgeting and technology? So clearly you've had a lot with budgeting, I would assume.
Significant budgeting. I mean, obviously, and people that are self-employed know it, the buck stops with you. If you make a mistake, it comes out of your pocket. So I am very cognizant of that fact. I think with budgeting, I am frugal because ultimately it came out of my pocket, which I think I would carry over to this position. Throughout the years, I've learned that being the cheapest out there isn't always the way to go, but being judicious in how you spend is the better way to do it. Sometimes you need to go out and buy the new car rather than repair the one you have, or sometimes you need to spend a capital investment to prevent more expense down the road. I think I have 25 years of doing it and in a very hard industry. And this year especially has been very difficult for us, and we've thankfully appears we're going to come out of it okay. So, budgeting is definitely, as far as technology, I've gone from regular register systems to POS systems to computerized. I think I'm pretty versed in computers. I'm definitely not. I know my limitations when it comes to that, and I know there's people out there that are smarter, and I know enough to employ it when I can't do it myself.
Okay. What is your leadership and management philosophy, and how do you build a team and motivate others?
So my philosophy is always lead from the top down. We have supervisors that need to have the tasks and need to be held accountable, and they need to hold their people accountable. I think large mistakes happen when you try to micromanage every little thing that goes on. I think you need to have the trust within your people to do the jobs that you set forward for them to do. And I think you need to empower them to do those jobs. I think that as a chief, you should supervise and make sure the task is being carried out, but allow them to do that. And one of the biggest things I've learned doing in business is if you undermine your supervisors, you've destroyed their ability to manage. You've cut their legs out from under them, and they'll never get that back. So I am very cognizant of that, and it to me is one of the most important things of not to do, and allow them to supervise. If they make a mistake, you address it, you deal with it, but you have to support your supervisors. You have to support the officers. And if the officer goes out and he does his job and gets a complaint, as long as he did his job the way he should be, you need to support your people. I think that if you start undermining their positions or their jobs, you're just creating chaos. The morale, I think, will, in my experience, has always been, if you treat people fairly, evenly, whether it's someone you like, someone you don't like, as long as, work is work, and you need to treat them evenly and fairly. And I think if people will respect you for that, they might not always like what you have to say, but at the end of the day, it's if they can't go and say, well, you did something different for this one or this one, I treat everybody the same. And I found through mistakes, through years of doing it, that is the best way to do it, in my opinion.
All right. What would you say is the one glaring deficiency in the police department, and what would you do to correct or alleviate it?
I think, like I said, the one glaring deficiency is the supervisors need to be able to supervise. They need to be held accountable, and we need to lead from the top down. Their job is to run the department. The chief's job is to handle the budgets, make sure everybody's doing their jobs, handle the maintenance of the building, just handle the administrative side of it, and allow them to do their jobs, to manage, to supervise. I think if we do that, I think there'll be a lot more respect. I think there'll be a lot more apt to follow what the supervisors have to say. They won't try to go around them. If they know the supervisor said it, that's the way it goes. And, if we hold people to a higher standard of making sure they're doing their jobs, making sure they're out in the community, making sure they're stopping by the senior center, saying hi to the seniors when they're doing their Friday lunches and things like that, getting out in the community and just being proactive, I think the morale will change tremendously. I truly do. I've worked for a couple different chiefs, and I've seen it done a couple different ways, and there's always been a high morale. People get along, which is nice.
I don't know which one I didn't ask you. Let me see. What is the biggest challenge you think you'll face if you become the chief?
Well, I think the biggest challenge initially will be getting the dispatch situation up and going and resolved. And then once that is up and going, I think right behind it is the reform bill. The reform bill is going to change a lot of the ways we do things. I think we're going to have to focus a lot on training. I think there may be a benefit to our town because we use a lot of the reserves. And if what I read is correct in the reform bills, the reserve officers will have to do continuing educations till they become up to the standards of full-time eligible employees. If that happens with the pending retirements of Hampden in the next 3 to 5 years, we can take these reserve officers, hire 5 or 6 younger officers, tell them we're going to have openings, vet them. If they're all full-time trained, then they can assume the full-time positions when they become available without having to send them to the academy, which I think is huge. It's $120,000 savings just without covering the shifts. So I think
Did you
it's,
hear that, Mr. Davenport?
I think it's a,
Well, I just calculator up.
yeah, I think, typically it's about $40,000 to send somebody to the academy.
Yep.
If we have 2 or 3 officers retiring in the next 3 to 5 years, it's $120,000 plus covering their shifts. If we have reserve officers that are younger, want to become full-time, and are now considered certified with the new state reform, well, all of a sudden now they can slide right in, and it's a huge savings to the town. In addition, I think we need to get some people that are just looking for part-time and working details and employ them as reserves. So I think there's room to, with a little bit of foresight, I think there's room to really save the town some money and employ, get to know people, bring them in. Like so many times, like when I was hired here, I applied, I came in for a couple interviews and I was hired. Other than doing a background check, you really didn't know me. So you didn't know my work ethic or anything like that. I mean, just what people have said about me. But now with bringing in reserves for the next 2 or 3 years, having them work alongside, seeing if they actually want to do it, see how they handle people, see how they interact with the public. I mean, this is a small town. We don't need to hammer everybody we deal with. We need to be cordial, talk to them and enforce the laws that need to be enforced and and deal with them on a regular basis, because we're going to see them all the time. So, it's not like troopers where you just hammer them and you don't ever see them again. We deal with everybody, on a regular basis. So I think it will give us time to vet the employees. So when you're hiring an employee, you know what you're getting, hopefully.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, long-winded, but.
That's okay, you're doing great.
I was going to ask that question. Regardless of your personal view, Massachusetts recently signed into law significant reform legislation, creating a mandatory certification process for police officers. So I think you just talked a lot, but if you can expound a little more, how would you ensure that all Hampden police officers and the department are in full compliance? And do you anticipate this is going to affect the budget?
So I think that for what I've read and what's coming out, I think we're in a pretty good spot. We have a lot of the policies already in place. We don't have a lot of disciplinary issues. And I don't believe we had any in the past that would disqualify somebody, which is something that they can go back and look at. So I think we're okay there. I think with the changes in how they want us to police, I think there's going to be a need for training. And I think it's going to be, we need to not only do the training up front, but on an annual basis to keep everybody up to speed. I think the days of having a reserve officer not being capable to handle a stop on his own or deal with a situation on his own needs to stop. I think they need to be able to handle it just like I would handle it. So I think training will affect the budget a little bit, but I think the benefit, like I said, on the flip side of that is if everybody is going to be certified, I think there's going to be a plethora of full-time people that can be employed. So I think if we spend the money up front, bring 5 or 6 of them on, vet them, so when it goes to full-time, I think the savings is with not having to send them to the academy. So I think that's a huge savings. I'm not saying it's going to work, but I think that's, in my mindset, would be a huge savings to the town.
How much time do we have to get this done? I mean,
So-
what's the law? Do you know what the law
So
says?
they're using the alphabet, and they're going, I'm sorry, not the alphabet. Each officer expires over the next 3 years. So I think,
So like you have, excuse me for, but you have like a certified officer, that's going to expire?
not for the full-time, because we do our annual trainings.
Okay.
So our annual trainings keep our certification up. So with reserve officers, they have to go through the annual trainings and
Yeah.
things of that nature. So the way the state so far has worked it out is they're going to say that you have till December 20th or December 31st of this year for, the first group
Right.
to go through the classes and become certified.
Right.
And then the next 6 months is the next group, and so on and so forth till it's done.
Right.
I don't know if they're going to continue with the Reserve Academy. So this may be a one-time benefit for us.
Yeah.
And then down the road, we might have to, which is it's gonna be expensive, but after the potentially three retirements, I think we're probably 10 years before the next.
Yeah.
So I think, and it's not going to be all at the same time. So I think we're okay there. I think. So, but the reform bill is absolutely, it's going to affect the way we do business, and we have to be prepared for it. And I've been in business a long time, and I've always learned to make a plan and make up a backup plan, because the plan you lay out may not work, and you have to have a backup plan to get it done. And I really think we need to.
The reform bill also changed the way about school resource officers. They're
Yes.
not mandatory anymore.
Correct.
Do you think they're of value, or should we continue, or?
I don't think that, I think they're of value for the high school
Yeah.
age kids. I think with like Green Meadows, I think having our officer, Jake, stop in now, and I don't think we need somebody in the school full-time
Yeah.
for the town of Hampden. I think with Minichog, I absolutely think it's a value, because I believe the way they said it, it's going to be up to the school superintendent. I
Right.
think they're going to have to answer them.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately it's going to be of value. I do. I think it's okay to keep, and I think for what it costs the town, it's well worth it. You just never know with how things are going to go, and it's better to have somebody on site to deal with the things. And everything with the internet in these days is just. I believe it's better to have them than not have them.
As you know, you mentioned we're going to consolidate our dispatches with Wilbraham. What do you see as the pros and cons of that?
So the pros, I think we're going to have highly trained dispatchers. I think they are they've been doing it a long time. They know what the officers need. I think that'll spill right over into us. I think they're going to know what we're going to need. I think the benefit with Wilbraham is they're our backup. So they're going to know if we need assistance, and they're going to already have it going. We had a fire over on Stafford Road years ago, and before we were even calling them, they already had engines on their way. So I think that's going to be a huge benefit. The response time is going to be a benefit. They're going to know if our ambulance is out of town and if they have to send mutual aid. So I think for mutual aid perspective, it's going to be very valuable. I think it'll cut down a lot of the time. The downside to it, if it's not working out, what do? We can't go back. So, I think it's going to work out. There's going to be some changes with how we as officers have to handle the calls and things of that nature. So I think there's going to be a little bit of hiccup there. I don't think it's anything major. Some of the times with us, there's only 2 of us on at night. If we have an arrest and then we have another call, sometimes our dispatchers have been certified to watch the prisoner. Well, now we're not going to have that. Wilbraham, I think, will have access to be able to view that. But me as a supervisor, I'm not comfortable leaving a station with nobody in it, with a prisoner there. That's just a no-no. If anything happens, you're done.
Right.
So on midnights, you're taking one guy off the road. So there's going to be order ins. There's going to, it doesn't happen often, but, so I think there's going to be some issues there, but but it's not insurmountable.
Yeah.
But I think the level of service will be better in the long run.
What about the dark station?
Well, I thought a lot about that. If the chief is in the station and you have an administrative secretary in the station, I don't see that throughout the day you would need to go dark. I would think we could handle that ourselves, or just with, we don't get enough of walk-ins to not be able to handle somebody walking in. And me personally, I like talking to people. I like being out there, meeting residents. And if a resident has a problem and the chief of police is talking to them, I think they're going to feel like they're being heard. So I think that might be a good thing. I think, after 8 o'clock at night, you get 1 or 2. If I'm assuming there'll be a phone system set up like there is in every other station where they call and we have to go back and talk to them. 90% of the calls that come in after hours are going to be dealt with by an officer anyway. So for us to come off the road, we do it anyway. If a dispatcher's there, they answer the person at the window, they talk to them. 90% of the time they're calling us back to deal with it anyway. So I don't think it's going to change much.
Okay. How are the sick calls handled now?
Right now, sick calls are, if somebody calls out sick, we get, as full-time, we get the first 5 shifts. If it is beyond the 5 shifts, it goes to reserve. So if no reserve takes it, it goes back to the full-time. If no full-time takes it, it ends up being an order-in situation where you have to.
The chief would order
the supervisor would order in the oncoming or offgoing. We've had a lot lately, but I think if we expand the reserves, get some more in that, that want to work.
Yeah.
There's just no other way to say it. Get some more people in there that want to show up and work. Midnights are always the toughest. They just are. So if a sick call comes in, you just have to deal with it. It's just part of doing business. There's no real, if it's getting abused, certainly has to be looked at, but it's just part of doing business.
Tell me about your Was it Vernon, Connecticut?
Vernon, yes.
You were there for a short time?
Yeah, I was there for 6 months. When I first got there, they were very leery on my businesses. They wanted to know why I was doing it. They didn't feel,
Yeah.
they didn't, I butted heads with the second FTO person. He didn't think I had my heart into it. And it just went round and round, and it was just not a good situation. I felt that I wasn't being given a fair shot, and going from Mass to Connecticut, there was a lot of differences. There, they were ordered in all the time. They were working 70, 80 hours a week. I didn't want it to be my life. You know, I love doing this, but I began to hate it. And at that point I said, you know what, let me take a breath. Let me go back and regroup, which I did. And then actually, in my opinion, worked out great for me because
You are.
this position. Yes, it really did. I mean, in my mind, things are always meant to be. And, I was much less stressed. I was able to do what I love to do. And it was meant to be. And, I've been here almost 8 years now. I think 8 years next month. And it's been great.
John?
You yield the rest of your
I
term.
yield the rest of my time.
2 minutes.
I have my
Yeah,
2
thanks.
minutes to
Senator from
the Senator
North
from
Road.
North Road.
Yeah. Good to see you again, Tom. Again, the questions I think that Mrs. Glover and Mr. Davenport have asked really explore what you want for your position. I have a couple different questions, and I think you touched on them before. My concern has always been community policing, because every time we brought somebody in, the board has always said, hey, we're a small community. Where do you stand with that? So in your opinion, do we do a good enough job? Should we do more? How do you feel about community policing? And that also devolves into, I think, your comment on interfacing with the young people, in the schools. You said maybe not full-time, but are you saying you'd like to explore in a different way to show them, as you said, the police are your friends. We're not other communities. Here, it's always the first person you turn to, not the one you turn away from.
Absolutely. I think that going into the schools, talking to the kids, especially young kids when they're so impressionable, they see, and the media is out there is destroying us right now. And they see that, and, cops are bad. Well, that's not how it is here. We are a small community. We are going to do our jobs, but at the same token, we need to be in the schools. We need to be talking to the kids. We need to be going down on their field day trips, volunteering, sending an officer down. What does it cost us to send an officer down? A part-time shift, maybe get some of the auxiliaries to go down. One of the things I noticed when I first came here, which was different from Granby, is when we do our Memorial Day parade. In my opinion, everybody should be doing that. Every officer should be out there, meeting the community, talking to the community, sitting around, serving ice cream, whatever it is, in the community. They should know who we are. They should know our faces. They should know, do you need something? Call us. We'll figure it out. If it's not our job, we'll find the right people for it. That's just my opinion. On the flip side, with the senior citizens, we don't do nearly enough. We should be over there on Fridays when they're having their lunches. We should be having lunch with them. We did one of the things we did with Granby was we had an annual cookout for seniors. It was $5. They came in, we prepared foods, we had raffles, we had the senators down to talk to them. It puts them in, it makes them feel important. And I wrote this in my essays, but one of the things, going to medical calls in this town with older people, so many times they'll spend 3-4 hours on the floor and then decide to call us because they finally just gave up when you should have called us 3 hours ago. Well, we didn't want to bother you. You're not bothering us. That's our job. That's what we're here for. I don't care if you need to reach something out of your cabinet for you or find your dog or whatever the case may be. They should be able to call us. They should know who we are. When I walk in the door, they should know my face. They said, hey, it's good meeting you down at the senior center or whatever it is, the pancake breakfast that we ran that, that was an excellent thing. We had a great turnout, and then COVID hit and a couple of things, but we should be doing that annually, if not twice a year. I think I definitely think we need to do more of it. I don't think we do nearly enough, in my opinion, especially in a small town like this, when you're dealing with them 3-4 times a week.
My last question is, it's a hard call. We put you on the spot.
Yes.
Are we enough hands-on? Should be more hands-off, just right now? How do you see it, and how would you bring your brand, if you will, as chief?
Are you referring to when you say us, the board, or are
No,
us as the
I'm saying
department?
you, I'm saying you, we have a current situation, we've had current in the past.
Yeah.
Do you think we should be more hands-on? You should be more hands-on as chief, more hands-off, or do you think it's all right the way it is right now?
You're referring to like the community, like the officers
No,
on
I'm
the,
talking
or
you
the
in the
chief,
you in the department.
me as the chief in the department. I think it's, I think it was a little micromanaged. I think, in my opinion, as chief, I would want my supervisors to know everything that's going on, whether it's involving them or not. I would say they need to be aware of what's going on. I mean, so many times I've walked in and something's going on, and I had no idea about it. And I'm like, well, I feel I'm one of the top, not top three, but one of the 3 sergeants. We should all know what's going on. We should all know where things stand, what's going on, because it's a small department. If Sergeant Sega's out sick and I don't know what's going on, or I'm out sick and he doesn't know what's going on, I think, so as chief, my opinion would be the supervisors need to run the show and they need to know everything that's going on. So I think I would I think I would empower them to do their jobs. I think I would empower them to run, I don't need to, for instance, Sergeant Sig is in charge of the reserve force. I think he's going to vet the reserves and have somebody he wants to hire. I think that person is the one that should be hired. I think we set up the policies and the hiring process for a reason. So as a chief, I don't want to go over them and say, well, yeah, that person's qualified, but I want you to hire this person over here. I don't want to do that. I said, you're the guy, you bring the person to me, as long as they're qualified, that's what needs to happen. So I that's my opinion. I think so often we get stepped over and having tasks done by people that were able to do it. So why, or we should at least be overseeing what's being done. So I think
Somebody has a job, let them do their job.
yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think that will help with the morale. I truly do. If people know where they stand, they'll be much more in favor of helping you. I personally will have an open door policy. If you have an issue, you can't talk to us, come talk to me. I'd rather, there should be at no time with any of the employees that if there's an issue, come talk to me, we'll figure it out. If the supervisor's not around or you can't, call me. That's what I'm there for. I have so many times just come in my office, have a conversation. Let's resolve the issue. It doesn't have to get to, further down the road when you can just handle it internally and be done with it. I've always been a straightforward, I guess is the way to do it. I'd rather, this is, you may not like my answer, sir, but this is how it is. And, I have much more respect for somebody that will, okay, I understand what your concern is, but this is how we're doing it, whether you like it or not. And tell me that to my face, we're good, and I've had a chance to voice my opinion. I've had a chance to voice my concerns. You make the call and it is what it is. And you have so much more respect than hiding stuff and doing things. That's
Good, thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Tom.
you. It was nice to talk to
Thanks
you.
for talking.
Wow, that went quick.
Well, it seemed like it, but it's a whole half hour.
Do we need to wait or are we good
Nope.
to go? Or
No.
As long as you turned in your
You
assignment.
turning your paperwork? You doing your homework?
I did.
Take
your candy and
I
go.
haven't written that
There you
much
go,
in a long time. Thank you.
Yeah, Sergeant here, who's on? Get all the sergeants here.
Killing me. What is he? Oh, Ryan's got a for panty.
thing that
I have a
mindful.
school committee question afterwards.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Hello.
Hi,
How are you?
Hi. Owen, how are
We're
you?
doing the elbows.
We're doing the
Doing elbows?
Yeah, we're doing elbows.
Yeah.
I'm getting too old to reach over the table.
Soon it's gonna be just a virtual elbow.
I know, it's going that way.
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Mr. Chairman, this is our third candidate, Officer Sergeant Tarwin Seegan.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good.
You got a nice long wait?
I did. Put a little pacing in that carpet back there.
Oh, Bob. Put in for new carpet.
No, in the coffee room.
Oh,
Did you turn your homework in? You written
I did,
assignment?
I did,
Okay,
yes.
all right, okay.
Well, we've developed some questions for you,
Okay,
and I'm the one that starts first.
okay.
So, we're gonna begin by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Can I interrupt for a minute?
Yes, excuse me.
Sarah wants to know his name again.
Tarwin Seega, Seega, correct?
Right, Taryn Segan.
Tarwin Seega.
Right.
All right.
So the first question is to tell us a little bit about yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, how your education, training, and experience have qualified you for this position.
That's a great question. Again, my name is Taryn Seega. I've worked in the town of Hampden since 2001. So I've been here for a little over 20 years. I've been blessed with the fact that I've worked with some of the most remarkable people at the police department and in the town of Hampden. I've met virtually and worked with every department head in the town in some capacity over the years, and the people that work for this town are great. So I'm very fortunate that I've been able to work for Hampden in the capacity I have for as long as I have. I've always wanted to be a police officer. Ever since I was, in high school, I joined the Marine Corps, served active duty for 4 years. And during that time, a lot of leadership classes and experience I gained during that time. I'm continuing to go to school right now. And during my time in the police department, I've taken numerous leadership courses, supervisory courses, career enhancement courses, anything to benefit myself and improve myself during my career. So I just find that this is an evolving career. Everything changes all the time. It's important to constantly be learning. I think that's very important. I'm just very happy to be here.
Okay, thank you. What experience have you had with budgeting and technology?
Budgeting and technology, I have worked with Chief Farnsworth with the current budget now and it's different line items. I've attended budget hearings with him, gone over the budget with him, specific line items with information technology, firearms. I'm the firearms instructor for our department, so I have to make sure that we have money allocated for training and equipment and all that stuff. So I used to work with Chief Farnsworth on that frequently. So I do have definitely experience in that area.
Okay. And what is your leadership and management philosophy, and how would you build a team and motivate others?
My leadership philosophy is I believe it's important to be a communicator. I think, and not in the sense of where you're speaking all the time or issuing orders. I believe in listening to people, active listening. So it's not just what they're saying; it's how they're saying it. And I find that's important because you can easily handle a problem by actually listening to somebody and whatever their problem is to correct the situation. So I believe a good leader listens to their people, and then they make better decisions by going on that route.
Okay. And what do you see as a glaring deficiency in the police department, and what would you do to correct or alleviate it?
Luckily, our police department is in a real good position. I really do believe that. I do not see any glaring issues that need to be corrected immediately. Our police department is going through a huge transition right now with the dispatch, and that's going to change a lot on how we conduct business. With the dispatchers leaving, a lot of the policies are going to have to be rewritten.
just the way we go about certain things gonna have to be rewritten. So I would say utmost, and I'm already working on all that stuff now with the different IT upgrades that need to be done with the PD, and again, with the policies and the changes. And that's gonna be probably one of the biggest things that are gonna need to be dealt with immediately.
Okay. And what do you see as the biggest challenge you're going to face in this new position?
I think the biggest challenge overall, it would probably be the new police reform that's coming out. That's going to change a lot of different training and education. So we're gonna, when that does roll out, we're gonna have to see how that is gonna play out. But I think somebody with him, can take whatever comes down. Somebody that's specific to Hampden can incorporate that into the PD to make a better police department.
You notice how I always steal your question? I don't mean to.
Well, you didn't steal the
Change up the
question.
order.
I steal the answer.
He still gave the
I just want to know
answer.
why Tarwin didn't get one of the company masks. though.
How do you know?
I do have it. I keep it in my my little bag that I take on the cruiser. But those are nifty.
That'd be nice,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're talking about the police reform.
Right.
And so how would you ensure that all the Hampden police officers in the department are in full compliance with it?
Well, once they roll that out, there's going to be a lot of state mandates that come out through that. And we're not going to, obviously it hasn't been rolled out yet. I have read what's going to be there. They're going to be creating a new post committee in regards to certifying officers. And so working with different states, with the state to our police department, and a good chief would be able to guide the process, because a lot of things that they're asking police departments to do, we do already. So, but there will be some changes, and I think a good middle person between the state and the police department will efficiently, I think, just enhance and make the police department better.
How's it gonna affect the reserve officers and auxiliary officers?
That's a great question. That's yet to be known. The information that I heard is that they're looking to increase the amount of hours that the reserves are going to have to be trained with in order to work the road. Some of our reserves might be, and I'm sure there'll be a period of time where we have to come up in compliance. We have some reserves that probably won't do that. Some reserves will, but getting new reserves is going to be even more difficult. So that's going to be a big challenge moving forward. But I think with active recruiting, retention at our own police department is important to retain the good people. But we'll have to see as they roll down these requirements, the changes that we'll need to make with the reserves.
And who's gonna pay for all this?
That is the biggest question in the world. A lot of
I
mandates
mean,
come down.
how
but
much
no
does it
money.
cost to train a reserve officer?
Well, they pay for it all themselves.
Okay.
So when I hire, I'm in charge of the reserve program.
Yeah.
So I put out, notifications that we're looking for reserves. They put their applications in. They already have the training. We may need to bring them up to speed, maybe with CPR, and first responder, firearms training, but they have the academy. But moving forward, with the academy now kind of being almost a full-time academy, I think they're just going to make it into one academy. Whether you're working part-time or full-time, that's going to be the challenge. And there are, even with the full-time academy, there are departments that send officers and pay for it, but there are still a lot of self-sponsored applicants that put themselves through just to make themselves more marketable.
But I'm wondering if you're a reserve officer now and you have to be brought up to the standard, the certification standard, I mean, they're gonna expect, if I'm a reserve officer, I'm gonna expect, well, I did what I'm supposed to do to get to be a reserve officer. Who's gonna pay for me to get to be the certified officer?
Right. That's a great question. And we'll have to see how much training and how much, I guess the big thing is how much time they're going to allow all these reserve officers to get up to compliance. And then speaking with each of the individual reserves to see what their future plans are, because we do have younger reserves that do want to make this a career. And if they're a good candidate, maybe that's something we can, help them with. At the same time, we have some, older reserves that, are doing this. They're very helpful, but they're not going to want to go through all this training, additional training. So, but the reserves are an important part, in filling all our shifts. And, people call out, we need, good reserves to come in and work for us. And we're at about 10 or 11 right now, and we have 2 in training. And it's important to keep a good, healthy staff, you know, to fill these shifts because they do come up.
I mean, do you think there'll be a, when I used to train at the district attorney's office, do you think there'll be, we train them and then some other department doesn't have a trained guy and they're gonna steal them away and pay them more money? I mean, I know we're really on the top of the salary scale here, but that some other department would pay them, you know, is that gonna be a problem keeping those people once they're trained?
That's a great question. And I think retention is important because now you're going to have officers that are fully trained, whether they're part-time or not, and can go anywhere.
Yeah.
But I personally believe I've worked for this town for 20 years. This is a great town to work for. That's why I've never left. Like I couldn't imagine going anywhere else. And a lot of the officers that we have been working, you know, Scott Trombley. I mean, these people have been with us for years. Michael Cooney, years. And these are smart people that could have maybe went someplace else and they chose to stay here, as I did. And I think it's, you know, the retention will be a problem. And, you know, you might get somebody who wants to, you know, go to a larger agency, but I think it's a great town to work for. And
More exciting, but we see them leave early. They don't stay in.
No,
that
right.
row. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
correct.
They want to be on Route 20. early.
They can keep Route 20.
So we're gonna consolidate dispatch.
Right.
What do you think, pros and cons?
There are pros and cons. I know the Wilbraham, Mr. Gentile over in Wilbraham, he runs a great communications department over there. I think they will serve us well, you know, and I think it's just the transition. I mean, we do a lot of different things that we're going to have to change in regards to the officers working at the station, and we'll have to talk about and, you know, evaluate whether, you know, it's a dark station or if it's partially filled. So that's something we'll have to talk to. But
Do you think it's gonna put more work on the line officers?
I think there will be some changes, and I think once we get everything organized, because we've been doing it so long, it'll be okay. There will be some additional work with the supervisors in regards to just like if a contractor calls and needs a detail.
Yeah.
How is that? At Wilbraham, their supervisors fill that, and I'm not sure how the union is going to, if they're going to be okay with another supervisor filling details for Hampden, if that makes any sense.
But if we had
small things like that.
If we had an administrative assistant or
Right.
someone there that could do that,
Right.
you know, like a 9 to 5 job or, you know, 8 to
Right.
6 or whatever it is, right? That would take that off.
Definitely during
And
the
plus
day.
you wouldn't have the dark station. You would have people that could do their firearms permits and that kind of
Correct.
things, you know.
Correct, absolutely. Yep, the day shift is definitely covered. You know, we have Michelle Morehouse is currently working there. Kathy's there during the day. You know, the chief and, you know, other officers. The day shift will be fine. You know, maybe extending, you know, an additional personnel to the afternoon to the early evening. The overnight shift is really, you know, the traffic that comes in on the overnights is minimal. So.
How do you handle, how's the department handle sick calls now?
Right now, an officer calls out, and the union contract, they have, the full-time officers have 40 hours of the first right of refusal. If they're beyond that, if someone calls out, they're beyond the 40 hours, it goes to the reserve officer list first. If we can't get a reserve, then it goes back to the full-time, and then it gets to an order-in situation, which has been happening a little bit more frequently lately. So with, you know, COVID, you know, it's been an interesting year.
You're the IT guy for the department?
Yes, myself and another officer.
Are we using laptops or iPads?
In the cruisers,
Yeah.
iPads.
iPad. And so Wilbraham, the dispatch prefers laptops. Is it hard to switch over? Is it gonna be a problem? Expensive, switch back?
I think I haven't spoken to them about it,
Yeah.
but I'm assuming that, and I'm just hypothesizing the fact that they would like us on the laptops because we can get our IMC mobile on a laptop and not the iPad, which is what we're currently using right now. We can use the iPad to run any type of inquiry we need, but the IMC won't work right now on the iPad.
So that's what they're probably looking
Right.
for, right?
Right. We got the iPads, they work great, they're small, they're portable, you can take them out and, if you need to go a call and type something, they work fine, but it's definitely something we can do.
You have 82 credits towards a degree. What's the degree?
Correct. Oh, criminal justice,
How many more you got to go?
40.
40? And how many you take a semester?
Well, I take one, but they're accelerated semester, they're 8-week
Oh, I
semesters.
see.
So yeah, I've been plugging away at that for a long time.
Yeah, I know. I went nights for my MBA. I started when I was 25. I finished when I was 140.
Last year?
Great. I yield the rest of my time to the selectman from North Road.
Thank you, Mr. Representative. Darwin, good to see you again.
Good to see you,
For a
Mrs.
number of years. And like you say, you've always been that tech guy,
Right.
helping not just the police department, but other departments, the town, the senior center, et
Yes.
cetera.
Oh.
Community policing.
Yes.
You've been here, you've been one of the guys who recommend people, you will like vet them and say, this is a guy you should hire for guy or girl, for reserve, for officer, et cetera.
Yes.
How do you feel the stressing is for community policing? How do you see that in the mix as chief? Should you push it more? Do you think it's overpushed? Do you think it's something that we really need to focus on in our small town?
I think it's very important.
Mhm.
When I interview candidates,
Mhm.
if I feel they're not a community-oriented person, it's somebody that I kind of steer away from. Right. So, but I do believe that there is room for more programs that could be created to make our department more part of the community. And I actually, my homework assignment that I did, I actually touched about that a little bit, saying that by increasing training for officers, specialized training, conferences, there's so many different things that we could train these officers on to motivate them to create new programs, outreach programs. For instance, there's a RAD, the self-defense thing. I mean, I know officers that would love to go to that type of training, have classes that they could teach, at the police department when all this passes by. And but I know that being, the coffee shop, a cop in the coffee, they speak with the community members there. But I think it's important to reach out to the faith-based leaders in Hampden and meet with all them, and it's being part of the community.
Sure.
And problem solving. But I think it's hugely important.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that, but that's a nice thing. Of course, you go back to years before you were born when we had DARE officers, et cetera.
Right.
But again, that's a thanks.
You were
But I think
bold.
that's just a kid. But that's where I think we're talking about, involvement in the schools. Mary Ellen talked about the fact that we need to have the perception of the police in Hampden to be the first resort, not somebody you want someone to run towards, not run from.
I agree completely.
So, and I think that you would have ideas for how you can keep,
Absolutely.
okay.
Yep, absolutely.
And lastly, and this puts you on the spot, current state of the department. Do you think we're, as a chief, hands-on enough? Hands-off enough? Would you change that? Would you look to, say, first off, you'd have a huge change. You'd have to get a new sergeant. You'd have to maybe that would mean kind of a wholesale change. Okay, you're stepping up. We're looking outside. But in terms of your management style, you want to be more hands-on, more hands-off?
I think I would say a mixture of both. I think we have
Hey,
officers.
Nice job.
Take a stand.
We have officers and we have supervisors. I think it's important to empower your supervisors to train them, to motivate them, and they are all great, like the supervisors that we have now. But to get them more involved in the daily operations, dealing with training, dealing with all that type of activity, to leave the chief to employ different ideas on how to create programs so that he can pass that on to an officer to run with. So I think it is a little bit of both. I mean, you definitely want to make sure your supervisors are doing what they're supposed to doing, and the supervisors making sure the officers are doing what they're supposed to be doing. once you get that good chain, and that works when it was in the military, you have that good chain of command going. As a chief, you're free to do a little more creation, more outreach.
So the chief points out the tree to cut down, but the officer cuts down the tree.
Correct, and the sergeant's standing there making sure it's
Make sure it's cut.
Go in the right direction.
right, very important.
You done, John?
I am, I have to say, because I think, you know, no offense, your answer is a little brief, a little more concise than we've heard before, so we have less time, but I like that. You know, you're not nervous where you have to feel like you have to just keep going. I appreciate the
I'm
fact you zoomed in on it.
I'm not a huge talker. I'm more of a listener,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. I'm not, you know, I'm
Mhm.
you know, a little bit more quiet, reserved. But I do a lot of listening, and I think, you know, that's a big part of how I deal with not just handling calls. You know, sometimes some people just need somebody to listen to. They just an ear, and I've handled so many calls and de-escalated calls where just by not talking and listening to these people, you can do a lot of things.
I have two more questions.
Sure.
One goes back to the new police reform bill.
Okay.
They no longer mandatory to have a resource officer in the schools.
Right.
What do you think?
I personally like to see officers. I've seen other, like Worcester, they're pulling all their officers out of the schools. I think it's important to have officers in the schools, and you know, kids develop these relationships and have somebody to go to, and not just this reactionary force if there's a big incident, but to have an officer that they see every day, that they become acquainted to and familiar with. And I think it's hugely important. So, you know, if they're not mandating it, but that's something that we can definitely, I think it's important in our community.
Okay. And was there a person in your career who really made a difference for you?
I've had a number of them. You know, I've worked with Chief Farnsworth for a long time, and I learned a lot of different things from him. Sergeant Joe Henry, who retired a number of years ago, he was there when I first started, and he really guided me into making better decisions. When you're a younger officer, they can teach you everything you want at the academy, but they don't teach you discretion. That's something you can only learn through experience on the road and handling calls. And having a role model like that kind of guide you into making the best decisions and why, I think is hugely important.
Marilyn?
No, I think
John?
you've done great.
Robert?
Yes.
Thank you.
As long as you've turned in your homework.
I did.
You're free to go.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very nice to see
Nice to
everybody.
meet you.
Thank you.
Take care. Virtuals.
Okay.
Good night, Carol.
Very interesting.
Second time for me, first time for you guys.
Yeah, very interesting, and a good group of candidates too.
Well, I think that's a statement the board can make right now. That I think, you know, whatever our decision will be, I think the town will be well served.
Yeah.
And I think it's a kudos to not just Chief Farnsworth, but prior chief. They've done a good job of vetting and training, you know, the supervisors to be able to take over. As evidenced by the fact when the chief went out of town, he always had somebody who could run the department, whether it was Sergeant Cooney or one of the other gentlemen.
So the addendum would be to allow time to read the essays and ponder, and you'll make a decision, or do you want to do a second interview?
I think we have to wait till we've read the.
Let's
Essays.
do the essays, and we
then let's go
can
from
discuss it next week at next Monday's meeting.
I think we've determined that I think Chief Marte is doing a great job. And there's he's running the department well, and there's really no, oh my gosh, we have to get this done by next week or else we're in trouble.
Right. All right, this Ridgeway Road variance to use only one deep hole in proposed disposal area.
Yeah, can you bring the map up on the screen so we can see that, the Google zoom in?
I don't.
Maybe Craig has the drone flying
I don't-
overhead. Craig, do you have the drone?
I don't mean to be, but I don't understand what are they disposing of?
Septic.
So you think?
Run this, please.
Yeah,
Run this, please.
but
Okay, there's the application.
Yeah, that's my experience. Somebody's here to
Right, so
soon he'll have the drone. Thanks, Craig. I have to say, in my years, I have never seen this type of thing come up before.
Well, I know nothing, about it, except that Lawyer
Lori's-
McCool said, okay.
Oh, I agree.
And so it seems to me like she's the expert and I'm not.
No, I got that. It's
So-
like, I've never heard the one hole versus two hole.
It was because of the size of the area. I think that they had.
It's a 1,500 gallon septic tank.
Okay, the raw was 1,500 gallons.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. I don't understand the,
Are they not putting a D-box in or
Is
something?
Jane, are
down
you
or-
on the line?
I am.
Explain this to the gentleman, would you? If you can.
Usually, I can. I asked Lori, just so I would be clear. Usually you use 2 holes because of the size of the area. There's wetlands, there's a slope area. There was only room for 1 hole, so that's what we went with. And Lori is confident it's fine.
there's a D
What
box.
goes in the second hole?
There's a D box.
So there's D-box.
Usually
That's right.
there's 2 holes, you pour water, you check the
Just a-
amount of
Yeah, that's what
time
I said
it
before. Is
Oh.
this,
Is the perk test?
Kinda, yeah, but it's,
no, that's what I
yes.
said before. Okay, yeah.
But
Right.
in order to okay the septic design, it has to have 2 deep holes. However,
Okay.
in this case, there was only space for 1 deep hole and it passed fine.
Why did you do shallow because
Yeah,
of
do
certainly
shallow
soil
because
or
it's
something?
right,
Okay, I'll make a
So-
motion to approve the request as recommended by the health agent.
You got it, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Just quickly under correspondence, I sent you an email from Attorney Pakula regarding his meeting with Attorney Sweeney for the Regional School District. And he suggested executive session, and I'd like to schedule that for Thursday night,
It's fine
6
by me.
o'clock,
6
if
o'clock.
Attorney Pakula can do it, okay. All right, Selectmen reports?
Again, I think I reported last week on the meetings we had, so I think there's been nothing since last Tuesday in terms of my committees.
Mary Ellen?
And I also have nothing except that. Is it appropriate for me to keep us on track with the goals at every meeting? So for the first, we have
First of
develop-
March?
the 1st of March, excuse me. It's to look at emails, meeting minutes, and materials to see how we're running these meetings and whether there are things that we like that we do and things that we think we could improve upon. So that's for the first. And then it's the other thing for the first is to complete the fire station ventilation project, which you were
Which
going to
I think it's
mention
all-
too.
it gets covered.
The electrical part has to be completed, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's for the first. So those are 2 things. And do I have anything else I had to say? I did mention to Eva the flag I started to say this to you, outside of Reddickers, it looks a little,
Well, I thought the problem was that
Right.
they were trying to get it as a double-sided, that the seal would not look.
well, it
You know,
looks,
odd,
it
right.
looks, it
It's-
doesn't look good.
Well, it
So
looks good.
she's gonna-
Unfortunately, the side that looks good is the side that's toward the trees. You know what I
Well,
mean?
I never see the side that looks good, but it looks
Yeah,
all
if you-
washed out to me.
Right,
So
so I mean,
anyways.
the bright side unfortunately is on the back side.
She's
So we need a double-sided
she's
one.
gonna look into that. I said maybe a
Okay.
higher quality, maybe different colors, maybe whatever. And she said she was looking into that, I think with Jane too. So
Okay.
the 2 of them there. And then Main Street Water, I said, are we,
Bob's got a report on
and
that.
Bob's gonna do that in his
Bob's
report.
gonna
Okay,
report.
that's it for me. Thank you.
Town Administrator's report.
Okay, just to clarify, do we want an in-person meeting with Attorney Pakula on Thursday, or are we going to do this over Zoom?
Who says we're gonna be in person? I mean, if it's the 4 of us, we could be zooming,
Yeah,
seriously.
You want to do it over Zoom?
yeah, do it over
Do it
Zoom.
over
yeah,
Zoom, yeah.
Okay, I think we're set with impact bargaining. I have the list of points. I'll bring that in for your signature
Okay.
next week. The Capital Planning Committee continues to focus on the fire station and the future of the fire department. We had a tour last Tuesday of the existing department, which I think was eye-opening for members of the committee, conducted by the chief. We're going to focus on that again at our meeting tomorrow night. I do have that interview that I told you about from February 22nd, the 3rd item there. John and I did a video conference with Peter Valinsky of Ty and Bond on the 16th to discuss further the contamination issue. Ty and Bond did propose a contract to take a look at 4 options. I think it was expressed to them by John that that contract seemed to be a little on the rich side. And so they've, let me just allow this person into the meeting. They've presented another contract for the board to consider, where they're going to be looking at the 2 of the best options in town. And it's, they're proposing 90, was it 9,600? 9,900.
The original one was up around 16 and it was.
So,
Does it seem that every time over the years when this topic has come up, we always say, well, Ty and Bob will do a study?
Yeah.
Or, so haven't they done several studies and
No,
they haven't done several studies?
No.
What have they done? Have they done nothing? Or have they,
No.
doesn't their name always get arise in this context?
typically
They're gonna
Ty
look into it?
and Bond is the de facto town engineer that does
Yeah.
majority of their work is for the highway department and the planning board. In prior situations with this, we used Tom Kuchar from Ty and Bond to
Right.
provide
That
advice
name's
to the
familiar
town.
to me from, yeah.
But not so much officially Ty and Bond per se. It was more like his expertise as world renowned. The solutions that they proposed, as we know, did work. The one that on the south side performed well and still performs well. We have no concerns with that. Unfortunately, a hard pump test on the well on the north side really, unfortunately, looks like it pulled in additional contamination, and that's the source of our issue. So as Peter has suggested to Bob and myself, we need to get farther away. The solution that's been kicked around, besides treatment at the source, which has its own issues, is looking at the Scannick Valley. And for that reason, we actually had Craig Revest, who's chairman of the Water Supply District, and Rick Green also chirped in because he was there when the district was formed and gave us some historical background on it as well. So they came back with a reduced cost for a report. I know the board is really looking forward to put this to bed. We don't want to drag it on. So what I think Bob and I would like to recommend to the board is that we approach the advisory for a transfer. Basically, we feel this is an emergency. We've got the number down to something that is workable inside the reserve account, less than 10,000. The reserve account, I believe, is still virtually
25. Untouched.
If the board voted to do that request to them, we'd be able to contract with Ty and Bond, get the study done, have that information back to our board to craft, if we desire, a warrant article for the spring. And as you said, let's move forward and put this
Okay,
thing
so
to
now
bed.
the 2 things they're gonna investigate is the Scantic Valley, using that water source,
Mhm.
and the second one is,
On-site remediation, that is, they put it, just like at your house,
okay,
a treatment system. It has some real concerns with how you do that. The biggest one is that if we put a treatment system on the well that's there, it could treat it, but there's no expansion. Because you have a well that is pretty much at the permit level for the houses it touches.
got
So
it.
it doesn't do anything for any future ones. As you're concerned before,
Right.
what if house B comes in and says,
Right,
well,
but just Scantic would address the whole.
we
shebang.
could, if you will, and I think this goes back to how the district was done, and Don, you may recall this. You know, we provided the state a little map of, okay, these house lots are affected by the landfill. The same thing here, I think we would do, like, okay, we draw a little map. These houses are affected by salt contamination from decades ago at the highway department. So we feel they need to be supplied water from them.
Okay. So that seems like
So
we're
you
making
need a
progress.
motion.
So
So
we
the,
would need
yeah,
a-
the name of the game is to get this study completed
we
so
need a
that we
motion.
can file.
Oh, to do this?
Well,
Okay, so,
basically you have, we make more, there are 2 ways to get money from the reserve account.
okay,
And this is one of them. So we need a
So I
motion.
make-
for-
you want to make a motion? or-
Make a motion, basically Bob would fill out the form and the chair would sign it. And hopefully they'd be able to act on it next week at their meeting. So I make a motion to ask for a reserve account transfer in the amount of Bob, is it
9,900. Let me just
9,900
make sure.
for the purpose of a study,
$9,900.
a study for remediation of the contamination problem.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, we've already discussed Hampden County Regional Retirement Board audit, and we're going to follow up
Yep.
with other communities and try and mobilize other administrators and other boards of selectmen to get involved.
So and I do want to, you are putting that in the minutes, because I would like
Yeah,
people to read the work you did on that report.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
We have now set up upstairs for Zoom video conferencing, and the system was used by the Conservation Commission on the 17th of February.
Okay, did advisory use it
It
tonight?
worked. Actually, they're not doing that. No, they're
I
not.
know they're using Carol's account. Well, the problem, of course, is that we're using the town Zoom account tonight, so they
They
can't.
have
Oh,
theirs.
I see.
Right, so.
Yeah.
they have-
I did also meet with the east of the Connecticut River Chamber of Commerce on the 18th.
Mhm.
We had an hour session where it was basically the administrators talking with the business communities to answer any questions and so forth. And that is that's the report.
I know that we had talked about, we pushed our advisory meeting to next week
Right.
because we hadn't had a chance to review our budgets. And it's still go, we haven't had a chance to review our budgets, so I don't think, I don't want to say the wrong thing, I don't think there's a real need for us to, oh my gosh, we have to get the selectmen budgets done by the end of February.
Right.
In terms of the total dollar amount, ours is not the, because as you said,
Right.
oh, we have the county retirement, well, not much we can do about that.
Yeah, right.
Oh, we have the insurance. I would like to see some quotes for the insurance for this
I
year.
do have some numbers.
And I think we're getting the hard number from Dick Patillo on the increase on health insurance.
Right.
And you take those three things aside and the rest of our
same.
increases are minor.
Mm.
So if, I asked the chair, if we haven't had a chance to review, should we tell advisory we're really not ready to come in for next week? Because we haven't looked them
Yeah.
over yet.
I have no problem.
And then my next question is, where are we with Collins? Because that's the
Oh,
next
yeah,
thing,
that's the
our
next
pay
thing, right.
rates.
Collins is ready with the job descriptions. They did send me, I have to tell you, a list of those who had not responded to the job descriptions that they sent out.
Okay.
I sent out a reminder. I think we are pretty much wrapped up in terms of, there might be one or two
Mhm.
who haven't responded and haven't responded all along. That's an issue. I think a longer term
Yeah.
concern that we're not seeing a responsiveness in some instances, and either to me or the Board of Selectmen. So I expect that their job descriptions will be coming very soon. I did have a conversation with Mary Icardi, the head of the program, on Friday, and I reinforced the request of Selectman Glover for them to comment on some structural issues, and they do have some things to say there. So that's coming soon, and then the next thing is, I know that they have been gathering data from 11 communities for comparables for pay rates and so forth, and they've had pretty much success there. Usually in this kind of situation, one or two don't respond, and they would ask me to call the town administrator and try and get them to respond, but I think they've had good results. So, these things have taken too much time, but
Right.
I think we're there.
And do you have any suggestions for how we would affect better response in the future, or what we could do so that people would realize that deadlines are deadlines? Or do you want, maybe you could think
I
about that and come up with something, or?
That's a bigger issue. And,
I have, if I may, I've heard from a number of people who were not very impressed with
Yeah.
Mary's performance
Yeah.
when she came to that meeting. A lot of people were insulted by it.
Mhm.
A lot of people felt that they had new job descriptions when Mary was here, and that they submitted those and felt as if, okay, I'm giving you what you're asking for. It's not in your format, but here's the information, that was enough, that this company is working for us. And so that's, I've heard that a couple of times, but more so that put off by that
There's-
phone call particularly.
I think it's absolutely true. I've heard the same comment that
Yeah.
some things that were said in that last session we had were considered offensive by some. of our
Well, I think
employees.
unfortunately, they're trying to pigeonhole, if you will, some of the jobs here. And this isn't the Marine Corps where everybody, you're a gunnery sergeant too, and it's so defined. And here, people do more than whatever. I know that you've had some responses back to the job description where people say, well, I'd like to expand on this and whatever. If the board has a chance to look them over, I'd like to see the edited versions, like this is the original that came from
And
them.
this is,
These were the comments in comment form, like in Word, where you
Yeah.
see it's like whatever. And I think we have a responsibility to the people that work hard in this town hall to look over and advocate for them if it's right.
I do know that I think the least satisfied individual.
I don't know if we need to get into that.
No, I mean, I did talk with Judge
Did
Howard
yourself?
about Judge Howard, about some things that he objected to. So, and we have taken, we've taken those suggestions and sent them back. I posted all of the responses and comments
Mhm.
on the OneDrive under personnel
Okay.
and HR. So,
I will say one other thing, talking about the descriptions themselves, that people submitted information that was not carried over into what was sent back from Collins.
Mhm.
It was if Collins didn't read what had been submitted to them. So, you get tired of thinking or saying, how many times do I have to tell you that this is part of the job that I do? And
So do we have a timeline, basically, because we need to get those wrapped up,
we do.
come back with their suggestions. Like you say, if they asked 11 communities and 9 responded, we're done.
It's a go.
Thank you.
Purpose
Right.
of my
Go with
call
it.
on Friday to
Yeah.
her, I called her Thursday, she called me back Friday, was to say, we want to get this done because we have a town meeting coming in the spring. And if we're going to make any adjustments,
Right.
that we need to have time to do that. So,
I will say in the past, and this has happened in the past, you go back, if it kicked to the fall, you do a retro. And don't feel we have to make the move just to do it because you don't want to do it wrong.
Right.
So there's always that possibility, and people understand that. So that's what I got.
Okay, anything further to come before the board?
no, we're gonna get these,
Yeah.
the essays. And then we're gonna read them.
Yeah, right.
Should we read them over here or do we read them?
Read them at home.
You're gonna send them to us, aren't you gonna send them to us?
There they are.
what's that?
You're gonna send them to, or we'll take them home?
Well, I
Yeah.
can
Thank you.
scan them as well.
No,
It's fine.
thank you.
Oh, they're public knowledge, it's scanned.
All right.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
So
Second,
moved. Second.
all in favor? Good night, everyone.
Hang on.